Welcome back to the Female Fitness Podcast. I'm your host, Danny, a health and fitness coach of over 10 years now, who helps women find their flow with all things health and fitness. And what I mean by that is I help women find their happy middle ground where they feel great in their own skin year round, they're performing well in the gym, they're healthy, they're happy, and they're living a great life outside of all things training and nutrition rather than their fitness goals taking over their entire lives or becoming something that is extreme. And in today's podcast, I want to talk about whether you can achieve fat loss and performance goals at the same time. Because I know that deep down, this is something that a lot of people would love to be able to succeed with. And it's something that I often help clients navigate because I work with a lot of people who have maybe come from a background of taking a traditional kind of bodybuilding approach or a background of dieting and now want to add some performance goals to their lives. So it's a conversation that often comes up within my coaching service. And I'm going to start by saying that it's not impossible. Like, technically, it is possible under some circumstances physically. However, the point that is really important to make is that to achieve your potential with a performance goal, you kind of need to do the opposite to what you would do if you wanted to achieve fat loss. And that's where the two goals can harm each other, basically, and harm you in the process if you try and make really good headway with both. It's physically possible, but if you try and do both, you're not really going to achieve your potential with either. And alongside that, you're likely, like I said, to experience health consequences as a result of trying to push your body from a performance perspective, whilst not actually giving it the fuel that it needs to achieve those goals, especially if you're trying to achieve both fat loss and performance goals over extended periods of time. To achieve your potential with any performance goals, where you're pushing your body ultimately to do things that it has never done before, you're pushing your body's limits. If you want to be able to achieve those goals and you want to be able to adapt well to that, more importantly, to adapt well to the stress that you're ultimately placing on your body, because training is a stressor, even though it's a positive stressor, it is still a stressor. You have to give it the fuel that it needs to be able to produce that output and to recover from the stress that you're placing on it. And if you don't give it the fuel that it needs, you may still see, surface level performance-based progress in the short term. But if you do manage to do that, which is not always possible in the first place, your body eventually will catch up and your body will fight back, whether that manifests as plateaus in your performance eventually or in health impairments such as menstrual cycle irregularities and the hormonal adaptations that come with that. Because it's not just when you lose your period or your period becomes irregular, it's not just that happens. There's a lot of other negative health effects that often come with that. And I'm going to talk about that in a second. And alongside that as well, even if you do see, some surface level performance-based progress in the short term, if you're trying to pursue both fat loss and performance goals at the same time, if you're in a deficit, your potential is so much greater than that. So even if you see like a little bit of progress, great, but like your potential is so much greater than that. So why would you not want to achieve your potential when you're chasing performance goals specifically? Because it's not going to be as rewarding of a process, as fulfilling of a process if you're seeing kind of like some marginal results, but you have so much more room for progression that you're kind of leaving in the tank. So that's an important perspective, as well as looking at the health side of things as well. But going back to the health side of things, like I said, eventually your body will fight back. It's not going to respond well if you're trying to sustain a deficit and trying to do things that your body has never physically been able to do before. And Just to kind of touch on a little bit of background of the hormonal adaptations that take place and why that happens and why we lose our periods when we are in a deficit for extended periods of time, or we're in even an aggressive deficit in a short space of time and have a lot of stress accompanied to that. We experience irregularities with our menstrual cycle when our body is in a state of low energy availability. What that means is it doesn't have enough energy coming in to support bodily functions as well as the activity that you're doing on a daily basis, whether that be, just walking around, doing your chores in the house, doing your cooking, doing your cleaning, but also your exercise. And when it doesn't have enough energy coming in to support all of those things, it sacrifices what it classes as non-essential bodily functions. And what it means by non-essential is they aren't required to keep you alive. And it doesn't mean those bodily functions aren't important. It just means that they're not essential to for survival. So one of those functions that it sacrifices is your menstrual cycle function because it's a very energy expensive process. It requires a lot of energy to keep your menstrual cycle regular, to keep you ovulating, and to keep you in a healthy spot. So it will sacrifice menstrual cycle function. And with it sacrificing menstrual cycle function and that becoming irregular or absent, comes the suppression of our reproductive hormones, estrogen and testosterone, as well as some other hormones being affected. But these two hormones are essential for muscle tissue development, for maintenance of muscle tissue in a deficit. They're essential for recovery from training. They're essential for our performance, our energy levels, not just in the gym, but in everyday life. Our libido, which can affect the quality of our relationships, our fertility, and so much more. So you're not going to respond well to the stimulus of training. And alongside that, you're not going to live your best life outside of training if you're spending extended periods of time in a deficit whilst trying to perform. And therefore, you're seeing negative hormonal adaptations as a result of that. And for the record, you can even see some hormonal adaptations in a negative way without seeing irregularities in your bleed. And something to bear in mind as well is if you're someone who's on hormonal birth control, for example, you are likely to still bleed once a month, every month because of the hormonal birth control, regardless of whether you're in this state of low energy availability and seeing consequences of that. So it's important to bear in mind that it's not the case that if you're on birth control, well, your periods are regular anyway, so you're fine and it doesn't matter. You are still going to see consequences of being in this state of low energy availability for extended periods of time. It's just that those consequences will be beneath the surface. So you won't see it in the regularity of your cycle. You won't see it in the loss of those bleeds or the irregularity of those bleeds. You may feel it in other ways, such as being cold all the time, being really fatigued, your sleep taking a hit, libido being suppressed, training not going quite how you want it to be. There may be other signs, but it's important to recognize that you're not immune just because you've got a regular bleed, especially if that bleed is as a result of hormonal birth control. So that's something that I wanted to touch on. And you're also, if you see these negative hormonal adaptations, whether that presents in menstrual cycle irregularities on surface level or not, you're not likely to feel good in your own skin because when your body is in such a high stress state, and that's a result of you pushing from a performance perspective, but not giving your body the fuel that it needs to perform and recover, you're likely to feel inflamed. You're likely to see your digestion take a hit, the health of your skin, hair, and nails take a hit. You're likely to retain water. And all of these things, understandably, often has a negative effect on how you feel in your own skin. And when we experience this kind of inflammation, water retention, changes in our digestion, bloating, sometimes it can even feel like fat gain. And I see, even on social media, a lot of people who are in this really high stress state where their body isn't responding well, thinking that they've gained body fat and looking for why have I gained body fat when they've been, trying to diet, when they've been in a deficit, they feel like their body is broken. But in reality, their body is not broken, it's just responding to the stress that they're placing on it. And the fact that it's not able to respond well to that because it hasn't got the fuel coming in to respond well to that. So, what they really need is the opposite of dieting as opposed to trying to diet further because they feel uncomfortable in their own skin. And that can be a really confusing place to be. But that is, like I said, all a result of trying to pursue two opposing goals for extended periods of time. And I've been there where I've lost my periods. Like I've been in that state of impaired hormone health where my estrogen's been low, thyroid function was off. I just wasn't feeling good as a result of spending long periods of time in a state of low energy availability when I was bodybuilding. And trust me when I say it is not pleasant to be in that state where your body is inflamed, where you feel like your body isn't cooperating with you, where you feel like it's almost impossible to feel good in your own skin, you feel sluggish, you feel like you're not quite performing or recovering well. Your digestion's off. I was very constipated at the time because your digestion often takes a hit when your hormone health is impaired. It doesn't feel good. Nobody wants to be there. So rather than trying to pursue two completely opposing goals at the same time, you would be so much better off taking a periodized approach where you focus on one goal at any one time, or to recognize which goal really matters the most to you and to stick with that because you will see so much more progress as a result of picking your or prioritizing one goal at a time, and you'll feel so much better in your own skin. So, an example of that could be if you really want to achieve both goals, it might be that you go through a period of time, especially, if say losing body fat is something that is genuinely going to be supportive of your health, it could be that you spend a period of time working towards fat loss first and foremost, and then after you've achieved progress with that, you're in a better spot where you feel good in your own skin, health's in a good spot, then you go on to pursue performance goals when you're in a position where you can actually provide your body the fuel that it needs to thrive whilst pursuing those performance goals, and where you can actually achieve your potential, which is an incredibly rewarding, what's the word, fulfilling and empowering process to go through. Performance goals are absolutely incredible, but you're only going to get the most out of that process if you're fed, if you're giving your body the fuel that it needs, especially hitting your carbohydrate goals. So it's kind of pointless trying to pursue both at the same time. Take this as your sign instead to take a periodized approach if you really care about both goals. Or, it's okay to want to pursue fat loss and it's okay to have that as your priority, but using performance goals as a vehicle to pursue fat loss only ever, from my experience, ends in disaster, a bit of a car crash. Because you feel disheartened because you're not really making the headway that you want to make with fat loss anyway. And you're also not quite feeling like you're firing on all cylinders when it comes to achieving your performance goals. So you kind of end up just stuck and frustrated as opposed to the way that you wanted to feel. And you end up wasting so much more time. It might feel like a lengthy process to periodize your approach and, go through a stint of pursuing fat loss before performance goals or vice versa, prioritizing one at any one time. That might seem on surface level like a long way to go about it. But the reality is that it will end up saving you so much time because you will just waste time if you try and pursue both at the same time. And not only are you wasting time, energy, and effort, but you also could be harming your body in the process, harming your health in the process. And if you do that, you've only got a very even longer period of time beyond that, where you're going to have to really spend time reducing stress, prioritizing your health, going for a very like health focused spot before you can achieve any performance goals anyway. And so you're going to take a lot longer to get where you want to be by trying to do everything at once. So that is today's message to you is if you care about both, which is absolutely fine, please periodize your approach because it will make your life so much easier. It will save you so much time, energy, and effort, and you will get so much more out of the process. And if you would like support with that, please don't hesitate to get in touch because it's something that I help so many clients with, and it just makes everything so much less overwhelming to have someone in your corner calling the shots. And it means that you're so much more likely to see success with your goals, but also you're not going to see negative health effects as a result of pursuing the goals that matter to you. And that is life changing, genuinely life changing. And not only will it impact your ability to pursue, your fitness goals, but it will heavily impact your life outside of fitness if you have the right support and if you take a more strategic methodological approach and you have someone who has an objective view on the process to call the shots for you and to give you guidance to support you with those goals. So if you're interested, get in touch. It would be my pleasure to help you thrive, not just in the gym, not just in whatever performance goals you have, but in life outside of that as well. And my coaching doors are open at the moment. I currently have a couple of slots left, and then they will be closing probably around September time. I will keep you guys updated with that. But thank you so much for your time. It means the world. I will put the links to my Substack, which is where I send emails every single week, and my Instagram down in the description below if you're interested in following along. And I genuinely love hearing from you, so please drop me a message if you have any questions whatsoever. Even if you're not interested in coaching, I just love yapping with you guys, so please don't hesitate to reach out, and I hope you have a lovely rest of your day.